Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. Today, the topic of our discussion is China in Africa. And to discuss, the motive to discuss this topic is that under this health pandemic, under this healthcare pandemic, the world has been hit so hard that we know what is going on in developing worlds and what losses are developing worlds are going to face and are going to bear. But we are not aware of what will happen in the developing countries, in the developing nations. So to discuss this China and Africa subject, I have with me Mr. Ovi. He is a geopolitical analyst and specialist in China and Africa relationship. So, Mr. Ovi, how are you? And thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm fine. And you?
I'm good. So, coming straight to the question, how will you contextualize first the China and Africa relations?
Well, yeah, I think China-Africa relations is a very important relationship that evolved right out of politics. So now, of course, it's more economic, and I think we haven't seen a return of politics. But if you go back to when, in 1971, I think when when China replaced Taiwan, in the United Nations, it took 76 votes, and Africa supplied 26 of those 76 votes that saw China, replace Taiwan in the United Nations. And that gives you sort of like a political background on how the relationship really started.
Mr. Ovi, could you please speak a bit louder because your voice is a bit low?
Oh, so sorry about that. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Please carry on.
Yeah, very good. So what I was trying to say is to paint the picture of how the relationship between Africa and China evolved. And I was saying, in 1971 or 76, I'm not sure, I think 71, yeah, when China replaced Taiwan in United Nations, China required 76 votes, and Africa supplied 26 of those 76 votes. So it gives you that perspective of political, the beginnings, So at that time, nowadays we hear a lot of people say, Africa is pandering to China because of, debt trap and debt diplomacy and all of that. But as at the time when Africa voted, overwhelmingly in support of China, the Chinese had zero investment in Africa. We didn't owe them any kobo or any cent. So it tells you you just can't reduce the relationship to mere debt and economics and trade and all of that. There's a political dimension of it that is always missing from the conversation. So historically, there's been that solidarity between China and Africa being victim of exploitation of Western imperialism and Western colonialism, and that was really how the relationship. Of course, from there we saw changes, to the relationship. I think just about the turn of the millennium, from about 2000.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let me put a following question to you. In this, that we are very much sure that we don't know what this global healthcare pandemic will do to developing countries and how damage it will cause to especially to Africa, because there are many scholars who are expecting that humanitarian crisis in Africa in much worse manner. So how you see in this all, because most of the Western countries have backed off from supporting Africa, and they have just closed them in their rooms. So how you see, but the Chinese commitment we are seeing is very, they seem very committed to their investment that they are doing in Africa.
Yes, the Chinese are they are invested in the continent for sure. But one of the most pressing issue for us right now, is debt relief. Because if you look at the debt profile of many of African countries, they owe so much money to Eurobond lenders or private financiers from the Western world, and also the bilateral debts. China still ranks pretty high for many African countries. So now with commodity prices, Africa being a continent where many of these countries make their money from sale of, commodities, raw materials, and so on and so forth. With the global economic slowdown, of course, these countries are not getting enough revenue, and they can't meet up, their debt obligations. So there's a serious problem, a serious, liquidity issues. And now you see the conversation has always been about getting China to work with G20 countries to provide African countries with some debt relief, because we believe that's how these economies can remain afloat. But some other countries also have benefited from IMF packages. For instance, South Africa is one of those countries. Also we've seen some money given to countries like Nigeria also. So it's going to take just beyond. We can't just heap this on China to say China has to provide all of the debt relief and so on and so on. It has to be a collaborative effort, and that's why the emphasis on G20 countries, working together and using that G20 framework benefits Africa, because it's also tying debt we owe to non-Chinese or or countries that are not, firms that are not, or lenders that are not in China. So we are really hoping that we get that debt relief, because with the debt relief, then that we will have a better chance of a faster recovery.
So thank you for answering this and summing this up, summing this very complex issue to our understanding. This brings me to my next question, that is about the geopolitics and the global reality. The globe that our Earth, planet Earth, the reality it is facing is the China and US Cold War. And the conflict zone at this moment we are seeing is the Middle East, and Middle East is very near. Middle East is as a conflict zone is very near to Africa. So how you see this global war that is going between US and China, East and West, that is going since decades, how it will transform and how it will impact Africa, because it will be very crucial for Africa, because let me put it in this way, that America has always offered aid and diplomatic support and dollars in exchange of their that you should adopt their ethics and their values. But China doesn't do that. So how you see Africa will be looking at this China-US conflict?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that is still being discussed. In Africa's policy, circle, because it's very, very important that we don't get this wrong, right? If you look, and just to go back to what you said about, this playing out in the Middle East, I think, where that's the war on terror, the Cold War, if there is a theater that really embodies all the threats, all the fears of the Cold War, it has to be the Asia Pacific, particularly, the South China Sea. That is really ground zero, in my opinion. But yes, it's also very important to understand that other regions of the world are going to be faced, with increased tensions and insecurity from the fallout of the Cold War. Africa not being, the exception. If you look at the US's Prosper Africa, or New Africa strategy, which they call Prosper Africa, that was launched, I think, 2018. Then Bolton was the national security advisor. I think he even gave the speech. He mentioned specifically that the US would counter China all over the world, and Africa being one of those key places where it's going to do that. So for us, we don't have any problem with the US doesn't like China. That's the US's problem. For us, it shouldn't impact our own security, because like we saw during the first Cold War, there were lots of coups and lots of disruptions that happened as a consequence of US-Soviet hostilities within Africa here. So for us, we are looking at people who would come in to provide us with the kind of financial support and technical cooperation that we need to develop our countries. But if the US is presenting itself as a better, but the US actually presents itself as a better player than China, which is really funny, because we're in Africa here where coups, assassinations have been funded, and carried out by Western countries, Western powers, the US, the United Kingdom, and France have gone about the continent since independence, doing just about whatever they like. And now today they're presenting themselves as better than China. China has not, I mean, if for any, nobody can provide any fact of China assassinating leaders in the continent. Nobody can provide evidence of China staging coups to topple governments who are actually doing what right by their people. Nobody can accuse China of bombing and destroying Libya, which was our most developed country in the continent. So for us, it's not a question of who is better. The evidence is very, very clear. Who has done the most damage, to this continent? That is not to take away the good things that Western countries have done, but it pales in comparison to what, to the carnage that have been unleashed on this continent. Whether we're looking at, Libya in particular being the most recent example, or the historic structural imbalances between French-speaking countries who, and France, what we call Francophone Africa, So it's very, very important going forward that we don't miss this up. We don't, we're not drawn into a conflict and act against our own interests. We need partners to come in and invest. We need partners to come in and finance our development, infrastructure and development. And right now, China is doing all of that. China committed $60 billion to Africa twice in 6 years. Today we can see the evidence of all of these projects, across, the continent. The US, has committed 60 billion, but that's for the whole world. And Africa will be very lucky, to get even 10 billion out of that 60 billion. Meanwhile, you could see the US and other Western countries have no issues signing checks and, printing money to fund their wars. So if you are not putting your money where your mouth is, then you better stay out of the relationship and allow Africa get the best possible deal it can get from China. That is our focus right now. Nobody is saying the Chinese are perfect. We have our own issues, with China, and the US is amplifying all of these, grievances, using its media outlets to really, ensure that the Cold War is live and, active here in Africa. So you could see the way it covered the issue of racism in Guangzhou. You could see how it's always covering issue, of illegal mining that are done by the Chinese, which we actually very, very take very seriously. So in the context of the Cold War, the priority for African countries is to ensure that the Cold War does not derail our development, right? And for us, it also doesn't impact our security.
This should be our prime motive, that in the now this colonization of process, any kind of colonization of other countries must stop, and this kind of inhuman activities must go back to their yards. So coming to the thank you, and coming to our concluding question, what are the hopes for people of Africa? Where are they looking at? What are the opportunities they have in future? If you, I'm particularly asking about in this global that healthcare pandemic that has hit us, the underdeveloping and developing countries. So my main concerns is people, because people are the one who suffers a lot. Political elite doesn't. So what are the hopes for the people? We have talked a lot about politics. Just conclude this on people of Africa.
Yeah, I think the people of Africa, they've been through a lot. We've suffered at the hands of imperialism and colonialism, and then even leaders who have not done well by their people, who have been very abusive, been very, very lackluster in their governance. So as it is now, there's a lot of pressure being faced by the average citizen of any given African country. Whether you're a farmer, you are an owner of a small or medium scale enterprise, or even a large corporation, the uncertainties are very, very clear. We still don't know when the economies are going to recover. And for a country like Nigeria, for instance, we've got 90.4 million people, the country with the highest number of poor people, in the world. So when the issue of lockdown came, it was almost ridiculous to see our leaders here just institute the lockdown without putting in place proper measures to ensure this strain of locking people up and not locking them down and not giving an opportunity to earn a living. The palliatives were given, but were very meager. It didn't cover as much as it should. You know, so 90.4 million people is a lot of people, and these people have to go out every day to even afford just to work, even afford just one meal. You know, so for us now, I think in our recovery plan, the people have to be at the center of it. The interests of people, not businesses. The interest, if you are running a market economy, the interest of the market and not large corporations. So we would need the African leaders to actually ensure that they're investing in social development, social programs, so to at least cushion, you know, the effect of COVID-19 pandemic, and also going forward, try to invest more, you know, in sectors that will create more jobs, you know, like agriculture, for instance. This is primary industry that will create more jobs, you know, and also allow small and medium scale enterprises to thrive.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ovi. And thank you, audience. I hope you enjoyed. If I sum up, then I'll say Africa won't side with me and Mr. Ovi both agree to the statement that Africa won't side with one power. Africa is looking for what is beneficial for its own development and its own people. Yeah. So, yeah, if you want to say something?
Yeah, one last thing. So I think it was Kwame Nkrumah. What a quote from Kwame Nkrumah said it best, and I think it's relevant today. Neither east nor west, but forward. That's where we should be looking at.
Yes, thank you so much. At this note, thank you, audience, and thank you, Mr. Ovi, for joining me today. It was a very fruitful discussion for me and very thoughtful and it would be very thoughtful for our audience. And thank you so much, viewers. See you next time with next guest. Take care.
Thank you.